Or a whole orphan, or
okay, so we have individual sponsors for individual orphans, and that individual sponsor will sponsor 100% for that orphan. So that's not like the 25. Well, it's not like the really dirt cheap stuff you see on TV. That stuff on TV generally when they say 10 cents a day and you can sponsor a kid in Uganda or whatever it is. A lot of that money is going to overhead costs, which is basically running the organization. A lot of that money, it's not actually going directly to that kid that you get little postcard from. Our money actually goes 100% to our kids. So our sponsors' money, we don't have any overhead costs. So all the money goes directly to the care of the kids.
Where did your money come from?
It comes from various people from around the world, from individuals. But then we also have a support fund, which deals with not only helping us continue the organization, continue this specific project from running, which doesn't contribute to salaries or anything like that, but little things like, say, getting stationery and stuff for the after school or paying electricity bills. And it also pays for kids who are in a transitional period. So we have lots of kids who either lost a sponsor and we have to get a new one, or we have kids who we're going to seek a sponsorship for, but they need help right now. So, for example, we have a kid, which before I left at least, he hadn't had a sponsor yet, but he had this severe skin disease, which was absolutely gruesome, and he needed medicine for it, or he was, not only is it scarring and just over his body, but he wasn't allowed to go to school. And so we started paying for his medical cost and this first semester of school through the support fund, which is by various donations from random people. And that gives him at least a transitional period until we find a full-time sponsor who can cover all of his regular costs on a regular basis.
How much does it cost to sponsor a kid?
Well, it depends because, frankly, this whole idea of kind of having a fixed fee, a fixed amount of money for a kid, so the kind of thing you see on TV, isn't really all that honest, frankly. Because if you have a kid who is HIV positive and has cancer, it's going to cost a lot more money to sponsor him on a monthly basis than have a kid who's just dirt poor, but doesn't have any basic underlying issues. So it's between around like $35 a month to $70 a month, depending on the individual needs. So we calculate for each individual orphan exactly how much.
So 35 to 70?
Basically around 35 to 70 for.
And 70 is a lot of meds?
So 70 is, yeah, when you got about $70 a month, it's more like lots of meds, hospital visits, the kids who have the most needs. So it's not like a cheap thing, but it's an honest thing because it actually covers everything. It's not, it doesn't go to any kind of overhead kind of costs and stuff.
We got other questions, guys? Well, any reactions to what Dan talked about? What do you think? Rick, what do you think? Riley?
I think they're broken.
What's that?
I think they're broken.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you prepare yourself for such a kind of pretty extreme volunteer opportunity? That's pretty heavy.
It's heavy. I didn't, because I knew that I couldn't prepare myself. So I think one of the most important things for this kind of experience is accepting that you cannot prepare yourself and that you can't know what you're going to experience. So I could talk to one of you guys on an individual basis for another 20 hours, literally just me talking, and you would still be almost not any more prepared than anybody else to go to these places. You just have to accept that you don't know how you're going to react. Some people don't do really well with it, some people do, and just kind of throw yourself in it and just kind of experience it. You can't prepare yourself. So I wasn't prepared, really, but I was prepared to be unprepared, and it ended up working out okay. I ended up being okay. You have a few. The first, of course, when you arrive, you kind of have to. You're basically immersed instantly. There is no, in Cameroon especially, there's not a lot of tourists, not a lot of white people. I had a couple volunteers in my village, but that's, you don't see a lot of white people and things like that. So you're completely immersed right away. But and you have like your tough days. You know, so like anything else, you have your tough days. So I found out a couple of kids who were, our doctor said were going to die the next year, and that was a bad day. So like I came home and cried that day. But most days aren't bad. You know, you just get used to the kind of poverty. You get used to the fact that people are dying, but people are dying all over the place. These people have, this is all they know. They haven't been like ripped out of the kind of place that we are into this kind of poverty. That's just how they've been their entire lives. That's how they grew up. That's how their mothers is. That's how their grandfather is. That's how their relatives are. So you get, I don't know if desensitized is the right word, but you get used to the fact that that's all they know, and you can't really change that. So it's, yeah, you really can't prepare yourself. And there are tough days, but most days weren't that bad. I mean, because like if you get like one kid to like, if you have a really good time with one kid, or like you help do some reading or their homework one day, or even if you bring them out to get some food, and they have a big smile on their face, that's all it really takes to keep your stuff going, even though it is, as you said, kind of extreme in some ways. But you really can't prepare yourself.
More questions, guys?
Riley, no? But you were gonna answer.
Yeah, I'm thinking. It's just so much to take in at once. And
My apologies.
no, it's fine. I don't know. It's like I want to go do something now.
So I have a question to you. If it takes, if you say knowing going into it that you really can't make a difference except to put a smile on a kid's face someday, what keeps you going? How do you
Smile on the kid's face one
smile on
day.
a kid's face? The small victories.
I mean, it can be tough because you see things that, well, you can't change. So I didn't even get into the kind of institutional issues that go on with most of these African countries. They don't have a government that's working, very frankly. And none of their systems work. So everything's corrupt. And Cameroon especially, everything's corrupt. So everyone from the president down to the teacher is corrupt. So if you want a good grade, you pay the teacher or the principal. If you want to get to town, you have to pay a cop just because he stops you and there's no reason you have to pay a cop. So there's all these institutional things that are major problems that I didn't get into, which I can go on for hours and hours about. But no, it is about the smile on the kid's face. I think I counter against basically what most the leading ideas of more like the liberal international movement. I think Western influence is a good thing. More Western influence helps communities, and some of the cultural things, which I didn't get into also, it actually is good having Western influence. I feel like it empowers women, it helps give them more information because it gives them an idea of the outside world, and I think you just being there is a good thing, as long as you're not giving lots of charity. I think the big thing that people do is a mistake, is when they go to these countries and they see poor people everywhere. They see all kids in the street. Once again, I guess you guys would be, but I get used to it. I mean, the kids in the street, they're dirty. They have some kind of clothes on, usually, or often like clothes that don't fit them. But Westerners just want to open up their pockets and just start handing out money to people and giving things, basically giving things to people for no other reason than they're poor. And that's a problem. You shouldn't do that. These people need to earn their things. You shouldn't be giving them. I mean, our kids, what we do is we don't give any money to kids or their families, ever. No money. We give them, enough food and clothes and, and a pen and a notepad. But those are only specific to those kids. The problem is if you give people lots of things without having them earn it in any kind of way. Like our kids earn it by going to school. We have a kid who we were about, I don't know if we have had kids in the past when I was there, and we've stopped sponsoring because they weren't showing up to school. And if you don't go to school, we cut off. We're not going to give you anything unless you have to earn it to get that kind of support. And one of the problems is that all these people expect a lot of people, they see white faces and they expect handouts. They go like this. In the cities, you see lots of people trying to beg for money. When I first arrived in Douala, which is the biggest city, you had all these kids banging on the windows of the cars trying to get just some money. But no, that doesn't help them if you give them little money. One reason, they're not going to keep any. If you give a kid money, there's not a chance that that kid is actually going to keep the money. All the money goes to the family, but they're going to be beat pretty good. So you're not actually helping them, and you're just continuing the cycle of them of just looking for kind of a handout. Instead of, that's why it's important to spend some time in the country and actually do some work and working with people instead of showing up for 10 days or 2 weeks, going around and then passing out coins to people, because that doesn't help anybody. So I think it is the smile on people's faces, and I think little changes, little things are still something. So it still counts, even though you can't change much. You can change just a tiny bit, like just pulling like a couple grains of sand on the beach. But that is still something, and it's well worth it.
How many kids have finished their schooling and go off and leave and go to college? Can they leave?
Well, everybody wants to leave.
Sure.
That's the general thing. So one of the big things is I've been proposed to probably maybe 30, 50 times since I was in Cameroon. All the women proposing to me, it was very nice. But the reason why was that they were trying to get out of the country. Now, if you were a woman, so any of the women here, if you went your age, if you went right now, you would have men probably proposing to you 5 to 10 times a day. They always, they're not like they want to sleep with you. They're like, I'm madly in love with you, please. You're like the love of my life. And you just met them in a taxi about 10 seconds ago. And they'll want to come out with you. So lots of people want to leave. It's very hard to get out of the country for like a university kind of thing. There are colleges within the country which are bad. Frankly, if you're a woman, you have to sleep with some professors to graduate. But you can do it. Our program has only existed for like 6 years. We've had a couple kids who have done some more advanced education, but nothing like in the capitals or anything like that. Basically, it's nice to try to like hope for them to like go to like university and go to America or do something like that. And we have one or couple kids that have a chance of doing it. Some really smart kids who have a chance. But really, if you get the kid to be able to read English and be able to, which is the main language in my area, or able to do basic math, that's a great accomplishment, and it will help them in their life. But that kind of big hopes of, they're gonna be able to own a big house and have a car and stuff. That's unrealistic.
And related, you said all these kids working. Does that mean they don't go to school?
That's a major problem that we have to face because our program only supports kids who go to school. We don't support kids who don't go to school.
And you say most kids don't go to school?
Well, no, because they do have lots of schools. They do have lots of schools. So I think 50% of kids go to school. But you do have a problem. Like we had one of my favorite kids, Gustav. His uncle. Well, he was his uncle, and then he was supposed to be his grandfather, and then we found out that he was actually his father in real life. It was very confusing. Finding out father stuff is really confusing. He was ended up basically treating his kids like slaves. So he would not feed them and make them do all the work around the house. And it was really hard for us to get them into school without the grandfather, father, whoever he is, to stop them from working. So instead, like when they should be in school, you see them around with like bananas on their head. You're like, why are you in school? So that is the thing you have to constantly kind of combat because that is the work, and that's like the traditional workforce is women and children. That's who do the work. So yeah, that's a constant thing you have to deal with. But if they're not in school, they're working basically. So the school's not that long. So as soon as they get home from school, they're usually doing something for the household.
Any questions off the top of your head? Sure.
So what is like the cost of living down there? What do you where do you stay?
Okay, so what I did was, the nice thing is my organization has had volunteers for a while. For the last 10 years, off and on, they've had volunteers. So there was actually going to volunteer housing. So I stayed in a Baptist rest house, which was actually not too bad. It was made out of concrete. I had concrete floors. I didn't have a kitchen. but I did have like a kitchen area, which wasn't really a kitchen, but I could eat there. And I had like a bedroom and a toilet, which was nice because most people don't. I didn't get into some of the gross stuff, but there's no really lot of toilets generally, or outhouses. It's basically just squat wherever you go. But I had a toilet, which was nice. Just use a bucket system, but it worked well. So I was able to stay but it was relatively quote like expensive to live there. So it cost about $100, maybe a little less than $100 a month for rent. So that was like an expensive Western style housing. So I was able to live very comfortably with a cook and a cleaner, which is a general thing. Usually, if you live for long term in these countries, you usually hire a cook or a cleaner. And it may seem kind of weird that you have like a quote unquote like a servant, even though my guy I still a great guy. I love the man, and and I thought of him more of like a kind of a member of my mini family. But you hire them basically because you giving employment, and like you don't know how to cook the things that they have. Like you can't cook, and like have you ever tried to wash all your clothes by hand? Because there's no washing machines or anything. So like it's I don't want to start there. So with a cook, cleaner, with all food, he cooked me 3 meals a day, 6 days a week. You know, about $250 a month or so for everything. So it's not that expensive, just because the cost of living is pretty cheap, unless you want to travel and that gets expensive. Like I never went to like a place where. Well, one thing I did mention is the environmental issues. Is there is no wildlife left. They've eaten it all. There's nothing. You have goats, you have a few wild dogs, which are, used to be domesticated dogs, but now they're wild. Chickens, and up in the mountains you have cattle, which are raised by a different ethnic group that deal with cattle. That's it. No, some birds maybe, so a couple flying birds. No wildlife. They've eaten everything. They call it a bushmeat, which is, if you ever Google bushmeat, it's a big issue in Africa. It's basically bushmeat. It's anything that it's wild that you can eat, which is everything. so everything's been eaten. So there used to be like leopards, monkeys, even elephants, all this stuff in my area, my region of Cameroon, and it's all gone. All gone. Everything's been eaten. There aren't even any monkeys left, which there used to be plenty. Even 5 years ago there were monkeys. Now there's nothing. Zero. No wildlife. Everything's been eaten. And you always see or think about. I always thought about these like poachers. The bat poachers, like the white guys with the big hats, their big their guns and their pickup trucks. They get pelts and stuff. No, that doesn't. I mean, I'm sure that exists, but that's not major. That's not the major issues in Africa. Major issues is people just eating everything. Because meat's expensive. Everywhere in the world, basically, except for America, meat's pretty expensive. And especially when you go to the developing world, meat is very expensive. And so people always are craving meat. So anything that is meat, they will kill and eat. So even rodents are almost all gone now in my region of Cameroon. You often see, once in a while, you see on the side of the road, when they find a rodent, there's some really, really appetizing looking large rats, which are about this big. You'll drive the side of the road, and you'll see people holding them on the side of the road by the tail. And if you want them, you pull off, or you tell a taxi cab to pull off, and then you can buy it for bushmeat. And some of them, though, are so dead that they're holding it by the tail like this, and they're sticking straight out because of rigor mortis. Like these giant rodents, and that's what we get for food. And so even these rodents are almost all gone because they've eaten everything. So all you have, and even the large birds. So you basically have some smaller birds, some kind of crow-like things, and that's it. And it's amazing the kind of environmental impact that high birth rates have. Because there's so many bloody people. Anywhere you go, there's people. You climb a mountain, and you're way up in a plateau, 8,000 feet up. You're you're maybe 3 hours from the closest village, and there's still people there. There's always people because they have such a high birth rate for the last 50, 60 years. So there's people everywhere, so they're just people get hungry. I mean, if you haven't eaten meat in a month, you would probably eat most things, So, including monkey or rodents or whatever it is. So that was one of the other most striking things is that there is no wildlife left. And there is wildlife left in East Africa. The saying goes, you go to East Africa, you go for the wildlife. You go to West Africa, you go for the people. And I mean, I like people more than wildlife, although it would have been nice to see like an elephant or something. But I didn't see anything. I didn't see a single monkey, a single like anything that you would think of Africa, even though they used to be. But it's all been eaten. They've eaten everything.
So you were sick. You came back. You're still recovering.
Yeah.
And you want to go back again.
Yeah. Yes.
Why do you want to go back?
Unfinished business, I'd say. So I had malaria, which was kind of, exciting because I had malaria, so I can always tell people I had malaria. Which is like one of the benefits of having malaria is the rest of my life I can say, oh yeah, I went to Africa and had malaria.
Yeah.
And you can always have something to talk about. You hallucinate, which was also kind of exciting. And you have really, really high fevers. But they do have treatment for it, although it's 85% of people who have malaria who are Western recover fully. And when you have 105 fever and your whole body's shaking, you kind of think about that 15% a lot. that's what I was doing. But so I got malaria back in June, and I got treated for that, and I'm better. And I don't think I got the strain of malaria. There's a strain of malaria which you never get over, but I don't think I have that strain because I haven't had a relapse yet. So I'm cured from malaria. But then, big thing, one of the more unpleasant things about traveling in Africa, which is a universal thing, is stomach problems. Pills like Imodium are like the most important things in your life because you're just going to be constantly in the bathroom or from whatever end. It's not very pleasant. So I ended up getting a really bad stomach bug in October, so I was basically bedridden in October. I got a little bit better in November, and then I got sick again in December. So I was basically bedridden for 2 of the last 3 months I was in Cameroon, which was not all that fun. I lost like 30 pounds and lost a lot of muscle and things like that. But yeah, so I kind of left in kind of a rush to get home and try to get better. So I didn't really say a lot of goodbyes. I didn't really finalize things. I want to continue to go back. I'm planning on going back most summers. I want to go back maybe like a month a year. Just because of, frankly, the kids. Like, I love the kids. The kids are just amazingly wonderful. They're just such tough little guys, and they're just amazing. So I want to go back for the kids. So I'm going to go back probably within the next month, hopefully, if I can get a good doctor's appointment. I'm still struggling to find out what's wrong with my stomach. But and then I'll go back for a couple months and finish up my things there, and then continue to go back on a yearly basis. Because it's very addictive. So like they call extreme things you mentioned. Like, basically, in my experience, extreme things are addictive things. So once you do an extreme thing and you're kind of used to it, you kind of want to keep on doing it. So I'm still there mentally. So I still, when I talk about, a lot of times when I talk about Canberra, I say, like, when I go home. Because I do think of it still kind of as my home. So, yeah, I'll be going back. It does get addictive. That's one thing I have to warn you about. If you do travel to some more exotic place, is you'll spend a lot of money for the rest of your life going back there because you get addicted to it. Because it's just one of those things you just can't get enough of. Just keep going back.
Any other questions before we? Did you want to go around the room?
I'll do that. Okay. Maybe last thoughts. One thing, if you want, I'll give you something you could comment on. I think I heard a lot of differences between what he just experienced and where we live. Right? He mentioned that. If you want to comment on that, a thought or a last thought in general about the conversation, we can just go around either way, whichever way you want to go. And I think you guys probably have a pass rule here too, if they want.
Yep.
So you can pass, but why don't we start with Fred and go that way?
Wow. That's a big difference.
Well, I think I'd have to say, sounds like it was very interesting and you learned a lot there. And personally, I think I'd like to try going there because it sounds cool.
Like you said, like stuff that
it's not as good here for us as like, oh, fairly good there. Like, I got 78 on my mid-year. I'm not happy about that, and I think that's not fun. But of course, there it's probably not as big of a deal. So
50% is generally a good grade for our kids in the Orphan Project. We always like 78. Would be so happy for 78. Oh, because our kids are so behind. We always root for like over 50% is generally because the school system sucks. So 50% is like, yeah, good job, you got 50%. That's generally how it goes. You go way down. So I was the same kind of growing up. Like a 78 would be terrible, and then when you get there, it's like, you got a 64. Great job. I'm so happy. This is excellent. You've improved so much.
Probably we should pledge to abstinence.
Everything's relative, right?
It sounds like, I don't know, it kind of changes your perspective on poverty, because like, poverty in the U.S. sounds like a luxury to poverty in those countries in Africa.
Mainly because of the social services aspect, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, like, I would say one thing I would say is that homeless people in America have it as bad or worse because there aren't really homeless people in Cameroon. People always, your family or distant relatives will always take you with them. You have a roof to sleep on, unless you're mentally ill, which is bad. If you're mentally ill, you really have it bad. But yeah, I think that's the big thing. There's no social safety net. So.
It puts things in perspective. That's for sure. And I guess just thank you for sharing and committing yourself to it.
Yeah, I think Erica summed it up for me. I enjoyed hearing your story, and you know, inspired me. We'll see where I go with my life. Definitely want to help people more or something.
we had quite a few people here who went to New Orleans a couple of years in a row to help with the rebuilding. So there's, gave up their school vacations. So there's a lot of social action DNA in this group.
Now it's all over swim breaks.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, just wow, that's just like such a drastic change from what we live in our daily lives. And yeah, I definitely do want to take up your suggestion to go and check that out, just to experience real world, I guess. Because it's true, like the majority of the population lives in, that kind of, I don't know if it's like third world country is the right term, but yeah, just the development.
Rick, any thoughts or comments?
I guess I'm kind of last, so I can't thank you very much beyond repeating what other people said, but thank you very much for coming and talking with us. The perspective thing, and we've all got it done an awful lot better than the vast majority of people out there, and it's good to remember that.
So a couple thoughts, and if you want to end, Dan, first of all, I think you are making a difference, and I give you credit. For me, I'm 50 this year, and you have family and you have children, and I have obligations to them, so I write checks. I don't go with my feet. You go with your feet. That's huge. It makes a difference, and not thinking about just giving people money doesn't maybe help. When you're younger, you can do that. Maybe before you make other choices in your lives. Sometimes I might think about doing it, but anyways, I have other things I'm going on. I don't mean to make it about me. I give you credit for doing this. You are making a difference. The other thing, what's amazing is how upbeat you are. I'm sitting here and I think you guys are, it's kind of depressing, right? But you have to be above that. You have to be positive. You have to show them an example. And don't worry, you can get over this. You can get through this. So just getting through that next day. And if I'm sure you got depressed too. But you had to be upbeat and positive so they feel that vibe. And I sense that from you. I give you credit. Because that's the way you have to do it. It's tough, right? You sit here and listen to this and go, oh my God, this is crazy. But I know that because I've been, nothing like you are, but I've been through situations where, I give you credit for that.
Well, and I can talk to you about the whole, money does make a difference.
Yeah.
It's just putting it in the right spots. Right. Just because so many organizations don't put it in exactly, really target.
Yes, no, I hear you, sure.
I sit here and think about the resiliency of the human spirit, like Stefan, with no matter how bad things get,
One eye.
still that independence and that I'm going to make it another day, and I just find that amazing. No matter how much you've got on your plate, that there's still that strength, that inner strength that people have, no matter what their situation.